Hey guys! In my recent post, the topic was the ego, and I briefly mentioned characteristics of identifying with the ego self. This video is an elaboration on that. And when I had spoken of the process of meditating and bringing attention to your breath, I was referring to the state of awareness. More simply understood, it's being able to bring your perception outside of you and observe what's happening from a non-local point. Now, I've always been self-reflective due to trauma I experienced when I was younger, and in an attempt to ensure I never made others feel the way I did, I paid close attention to how I spoke to and treated people. This I assumed everyone experienced, and I didn't give it much thought. It wasn't until a difficult time a few years ago that I began my journey into self-discovery and came across awareness as a state of being, the law of attraction, and the art of mindfulness. In my seeking to reconnect to my authentic self, I found numerous books and videos that introduced me to different levels of consciousness, and how our perspective can change the world around us. It's as we grow and observe the world that our conscious awareness develops. Those who lived before us shared their experiences with each other and made agreements about how reality is to be perceived. Chilton Pearce, author of Exploring the Crack in the Cosmic Egg, calls it cultural semantic reality. These agreements make up our collective consciousness, a common narrative. And it's the individual ego that is the part of the personality that navigates this reality and is developed in childhood as we cope with this constructed illusion. The ego is behind the I and me and the declarative thoughts and statements about our identity. Agreeing with them builds and reinforces our personality. Our beliefs become stored in our subconscious minds and patterns are developed from them. Our ego gains access to these patterns and uses them as a means to stay in control. Depending on the individual's childhood, he or she may have a secure bond and positive upbringing which leads to a healthy ego. The opposite of this identity would be an individual who experiences trauma or did not receive the nurture they needed and was unable to heal. This could lead to a wounded ego. And the wounded ego is rooted in fear, anxiety, limiting beliefs, and toxic thinking patterns. Its objective is to compensate and protect the vulnerable parts from the outside world, and in fact, ends up preventing us from loving ourselves and our lives. In an attempt to survive, the traumatized ego adapts dysfunctional programming and often becomes inflated. It whispers into our minds the false stories about who we are. Now, it's not always easy to recognize the inflated ego because our culture does not reward self-reflection and instead thrives off of a wounded self-perception. But one way to spot it is by being aware of the emotional reactions you have to external factors. Some signs of an inflated ego are the anger with a loved one, the need to be right, feelings of insecurity, jealousy, and the need to impress. If there is drama present, most likely it's due to the ego. Also, the more false stories we tell ourselves, the more inflated the ego becomes because it has to keep up with the illusion to survive. My experience with the inflated ego began when I was growing up and teased for being feminine and playing with girls. I always felt different, was not motivated by the same things as the other boys. I was sensitive, very caring, and always thought of others. It was difficult for me to understand why this difference was bad. This caused me a lot of internal conflict and to be very introverted. When I got to be a teenager, I had a severe acne, and being teased for such led to me creating a wall of defense. In an avoidance of experiencing shame and fear, I walked on pins and needles and attempted to conform to expectations of others. When I came out as gay, I felt free to be myself and allowed a bit of who I truly was to be exposed to those whom I trusted. It wasn't until I graduated college that I started to experience a change in the way I perceived myself. I was getting more attention, I was believing people when they started to compliment my appearance, and I began to worry about my physicality. I got caught up in the shame of gay culture and surrounded myself with binge drinking and toxic projection of my feelings. Getting into management gave me a sense of control and put me in a position to be in charge of others. Though I inherited a good work ethic from my family, unresolved insecurities left me with unrealistic expectations and an insensitivity to others' feelings. Though I took feedback well and always attempted to be better, I took failure very personal and expected others to do the same. As I grew in my leadership, I became aware of motivating and inspiring others through authentic connection and understanding. However, my feedback could not come without a follow-up bitchy comment that I masked with the good old sassy gay friend excuse. And it wasn't until 2016 that I was hit with discomfort in all aspects of my life and was forced to look at who I was. I saw many characteristics of the inflated ego that I mentioned. Realizing I was not being true to myself, I quit my job and set out to find the part of me I had buried so long ago. It was in this journey that I have aligned with truth and the desire to bring down this false sense of self we let rule our world. It is not an easy feat because the boosted ego thrives within the world that we currently live for many reasons. For one, it is reinforced by the competition and division that our culture creates. Survival of the fittest is the common theme. This belief has not only inflated the ego, but enslaved humanity to it. It is no surprise that humans are so reactive. We have been led to believe that to live is to struggle to come out on top. Merriam-Webster defines success as the fact of getting or achieving wealth, respect, or fame. So as evident in this respected source, we have agreed that to reach accomplishment of self, we must look outward. In other words, how we are perceived by others defines us. So it would make sense that our individual realities are comprised of external efforts. This perspective also drives us to comparison to others. So Tom, with a big house, several cars, and 10 million followers, is a perfect societal model for success. Everyone should be like Tom. Also, here in the West, physical appearance of the body contributes significantly to the sense of who we think we are. How others see us becomes the mirror by which we determine our identity. The popularity of social media is the direct manifestation of this. The proof is in the structure of receiving likes for pictures and the overwhelming number of selfies you can find as you scroll through. Many of us go so far as to alter our physicality with filters and cosmetics in an attempt to receive optimal approval. This subconscious belief is reinforced by culture when it is implied in advertisement and media that we must purchase this in order to be acceptable in the eyes of our peers. It is so easy for us to feel a diminished sense of self-worth when we give control over that feeling to someone or something outside of us. Within the culture of survival of the fittest we have created, the I thought that we have is enlarged by our need to find our place among the crowd. The higher the place, the better. And in this form of thought, you cannot achieve your place without the opposing of the other. So for example, if I want to feel good about myself and that feeling comes from someone feeling inferior, I need an object to be the other that takes the place of that inferiority. Now, we do not normally go around seeking employment as the villain of someone's story, so it is often the habit of fault-finding and complaining about others that we have found ourselves there. An example of this can be seen all over social media as people identified with one political party sling insults at those with opposing views. The truth is, if you recognize yourself to be preoccupied with the lives of others instead of your own, you could be under the control of your ego. Additional evidence is the common perception that kindness and sensitivity are weaknesses. The phrase "nice guys finish last" didn't come from nothing. With enough reinforcement, it has become a belief. It's not cool to be nice. That's naive and stupid. Instead, it's cool to not care for others and shame those for believing in such behavior labeled as childish. I am an example of how many of us let this societal expectation change us. But we must understand this belief is destructive and limiting if we wish to make any progress. Now, my words are not intended to blame, shame, or upset anyone. If you find contentment in accumulating things and altering your life for the approval of others, I wish you well. I simply intend to shed light on a topic that has become an automated response in our subconscious due to the repression of knowledge. The truth is, we have a choice before us. Continue to perceive the world through the eyes of duality, or understand the truth that we are all connected. And for those of us who choose the latter, the work to be done is within. We must look at our belief systems we are attached to, and surrender those that separate us to the faith in the greater good. I am reminded of a quote by the American cartoonist and journalist Joe Sacco. "It is great to be introspective. Self-analysis can be useful, but only if it results in action." Now, I've attached links to 2 books I've read that I think will be great for anyone who wants to dive deeper into understanding the ego and how we collectively construct our reality through language and belief. The first is A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose by Echart Tolle, and Exploring the Crack in the Cosmic Egg by Chilton Pearce. Please like, share, and comment below. Tell me about how your ego has dominated your life, and add any other examples of how to identify an inflated ego that maybe I forgot. Thank you so much for your attention. I love you guys.